everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Erin, we're so happy that you're here to join us on our Books and Bindings chat tonight.
It's very exciting to be here. I love books and bindings.
Oh, well, this is the first time we're meeting in person, kind of, or over Zoom. It's so fun actually getting to talk to you face to face.
Yeah, it is really great, especially because I see you guys interacting a lot and doing stuff together. So it's fun to be like a part of the girl gang.
Oh, well, we
We're-
agree.
Yeah, we're happy you're part of the girl gang. It's fun to be in a girl gang.
Never been a part of a girl gang before.
I know, it's like this is nice, like a momentous occasion. Well, we want to maximize every minute we have with you. So we're gonna jump right in. Everyone who's viewing, we are interviewing Erin about her upcoming release, which is October 25th. October 25th, A Crown of Chains is coming out. There it is. The beautiful book itself. And so we're going to be interviewing Erin about her book tonight. So without further ado, Erin, I'm going to ask you the first question. So the first question is, what draws you to write fantasy and biblical retellings? And added on to that question, what made you decide to combine the two of them?
Yeah, so I really love fantasy. It's like one of my favorite genres. I think what's really exciting about fantasy is there's this detachment from reality that you get with fantasy that allows you to kind of fully embrace new ideas or new ways of thinking or new perspectives on life. And so I really love that, and like fun worlds and characters and stuff too, of course, but it adds this like layer of separation that I think is really helpful sometimes in kind of just growing and learning and kind of those things. And so a big reason why it's a fantasy retelling is because for a long time I really loved this. Those are my dogs. I want to close the door really fast.
Oh,
Normally they're pretty chill, but
they're
Yeah.
excited for Books and Bindings.
Yes, they're very excited. Yes, so I'm just going to talk over them until the car passes by. But so I really love the story of Esther, and just really feeling like there was a lot to the story that I hadn't ever seen really explored before in other adaptations. And so when I finally had the idea of like, oh, I could do a fantasy retelling, I was like, oh, that would like be really helpful, because I feel like if I just did a straight up adaptation, there's a lot of expectations you bring into it of like, okay, well, this is what I've seen before. And so I kind of expect this, and I didn't want it to be too jarring, because I do kind of do things a little bit different than a typical Esther story does things a lot of times. And I didn't want it to be something the reader automatically just kind of like rejected. And so telling it as a fantasy retelling, it allows it to kind of be new and be different, and for the reader to kind of have a new perspective on the original story without like that barrier of this is what I've experienced before. So yeah.
I completely agree. I think when I just finished reading your book today, by the way, and especially the last 50 pages, I was like on the edge of my seat, and it was the perfect ending. But I think when I first started reading it, I was like, oh, another Esther retelling. And from the first chapter, I was like, whoa, this is different. There's fairies. What is happening? And I love how your creative mind, from taking the politics and the different people groups in the Bible story of Esther and making that into a whole fantasy retelling and using the different kinds of magical creatures to symbolize those different people groups. That was just super spot on.
Oh, thanks. It was very fun.
How long did it take you to write this book?
Well, I've had the idea. I haven't had this idea for a long time, but I had kind of the idea of an Esther story for a long time. And because I was like, nothing out there does the story justice. And I really wanted my husband to write a musical with me for Esther. And he was like, no, there's too many Esther musicals. And so when I finally had the idea to do the fantasy retelling, it was kind of near the end of 2020. It was around like, I think Thanksgiving. I'm pretty sure I was in the car with Valerie and we were driving to Canadian Thanksgiving. And I was like, Valerie, I think I figured out how to tell this story. So yeah, that would have been October 2020. So 2 years ago is when I kind of first really started developing the idea. And then it took me a couple months to plot it and plan it. And then a few months to write the first draft and many, many more months to get to here.
That's amazing. So it seems like within a whole year though of your starting process, it's going to be released within, you know, that, or no, you said 2 years, you say 2020?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, 2020. So it's the same month though, within those 2 years. Like that's pretty cool that you've chosen the same month. So it's I don't know, that's kind of neat. But yeah, and also like I want to echo what Jordan said, like the way that you interweaved like all of your politics was so amazing. I especially liked like your element of suspense throughout the entire novel. Like when Jordan said the last 50 pages like gripped her and like she couldn't stop, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, like I felt that so deeply, so much throughout the entire thing. But especially I was like, I know how Esther ends, but how does this story end? Like I was just mesmerized. So
yeah, I would get a lot of messages from early readers just being like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. Like, and I was like, it's okay. Like, I promise it's the story of Esther. Like, Roxana's not gonna die. And yeah, but it is kind of fun to like really twist it in a way that like you get to the end and like it really is the Esther story, but it's like, oh my gosh, how can this actually work out and happen? So
how did you decide on Esther as your book out of all the books in the Bible?
Well, it was kind of like I heard a sermon and it talked a lot about Mordecai in a way that I'd never really like heard his character talked about before. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so interesting how like, you know, the comparison of Esther's story and Daniel's story and the differences in how they handled their faith, whereas, you know, Daniel was very bold with his faith, Esther hides her faith. And so that contrast was really intriguing to me. And I was like, I don't think I've ever really seen a version of Esther where like one, Xerxes isn't the love interest, and two, where Mordecai has a character arc. So those kind of really inspired me and drew me to the story. And I really love the quote that's kind of like, if you can't find the book you're looking to read, then you just need to write it yourself. So that's kind of where this came from.
I love that.
That's so cool. So similar to that, or off of that same question, what kind of research went into writing A Crown of Chains?
Yeah, kind of a lot. A lot of like listening to sermons and reading commentaries on the Book of Esther. And that kind of happened slowly over the years, just as I was interested and wanting to learn more and wanting to really dig into the Book of Esther. So a lot of sermons and commentaries. The Jewish Women's Archive, which is a website, is like a great resource just to kind of get snippets, and then reading a lot about King Xerxes, who is, you know, King Ahasuerus. You know, that's who we were pretty sure he is. And so just reading about him and kind of through his different war stuff he did, trying to figure out about his personality and his character. And yeah, just kind of like a lot of snippets everywhere. And then eventually they all came together.
So neat. It's just
The internet.
I've seen some updates on Goodreads of like some of the source material that you have been reading. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. So it's neat to hear that all coming together.
Yep. And I have on my website, I have like a blog series that really goes into more depth about like different characters and kind of, you know, where's the context for that character and stuff like that. So you know, let's go look at that.
That's awesome. And very helpful too, because I'm sure there are people who are going to be like, okay, I want to know more, you know, so go to that resource.
That's what I want. Yeah.
So cool.
I think we went a little bit out of order with the questions.
Yeah, it's okay. I know I'm looking at them now. I'm like, okay.
On 5. Sorry, that was totally my fault. I got so caught up in the excitement of interviewing Erin.
It's okay. We're still sometimes working through our transitions here.
It's fine. It's casual.
True. Okay. Let's see. Am I asking the next one, Jordan?
Yes, I think it's number 5.
Oh, you
Yep.
said number 5. Okay, sorry.
No
So the
worries.
next question is, where do you derive your inspiration when it comes to character building? Because that's something I've noticed when reading. I was like, wow, each character has a really great arc. They feel very grounded. I feel like they're very well rounded. So yeah, what does that process look like for you?
So, I don't know, when I write a character, especially like my main character, I really need to be able to relate to them. Like, even if their personality and their struggles are completely different, having a baseline. So with every character, where I start is like, what is the lie that they believe and what is the truth they need to learn? And so regardless of, if they have a negative arc, then they don't accept the truth if it's presented to them. And if they have a positive arc, then they're presented with the truth and eventually, like, they accept it. So that's kind of where I start baseline with every character, is like, okay, what is the lie that they believe about themselves or about the world around them? And I get super duper specific. And that's really helpful, because from that I can kind of derive, like, okay, like, if the lie that they believe about themselves is, I should have just written one down, but is like, no one will love me unless my hair is pink, then from that I can derive different personality traits of like what their values are. Like, are they bold or are they cautious? Are they a people pleaser or are they stubborn? Different stuff like that can come out of that lie, and it kind of keeps every character very central. But then it allows me to really grow with the characters. Because if it's a lie that I really struggle with believing and living out the truth with, then it gives me a chance to kind of explore that in the confines of a story and, see, you know, truth is better, and it kind of encourages me in my walk and different stuff like that.
That's
Yeah.
really encouraging. I am always fascinated hearing about how other people develop their characters, especially character development is really hard for me. And so
Mm.
hearing that's the approach that you take with the lies and the truth, that makes so much sense. I need to try that. So that's really neat. Who
Highly
was
recommend.
your favorite character to write, or a couple of your favorite characters?
Oh, it's so hard. I mean, I really love Lilith. She's one of my villains. She's the second favorite, which I really just love being able to put that character in the story. And yeah, because she's not really ever in any of the versions, but she's in the Bible. And so I love her character, and there's all sorts of stuff there. And then I really loved Kissa, which is another one of the villains. She was Zaresh's kind of reimagining, because I really wanted Zaresh to have a more prominent presence in my Esther Roxana's like daily life. Like, I wanted to kind of show that more, because she's kind of in the shadows a lot of times. She's just like hanging out at home. And so I really wanted to bring her into the chaos, because I find it super intriguing how Zaresh is like the mastermind in a lot of ways, and Haman really is kind of like that more foolish, greedy villain. And so I really wanted to show their dynamic, but since it's first person, I really needed to bring her into the story. So they were really fun.
I love that that was your answer. I am also fascinated by villains. Like, Draco Malfoy is my favorite Harry Potter character because he's just, I don't know. I can just imagine what it's like to step inside the mind of a villain as you're writing it, and how it's totally outside of your character, but it's like acting.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I knew you were going to say Lilith, and I love that I was right.
Yeah, everyone hates her. I remember my developmental editor, when she first sent me notes, she was like, if you can find a way to kill this character on screen, like, I think your readers would really appreciate that.
That's so funny.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you love to hate her, because when I read it, I was like, wow, she's really well written. So yeah, no, you did a really great job with the villains for sure. I mean, even Frederick, like I was like, oh my gosh, there was just so much so many good bad characters in your book that I was like, I cannot stand this person like at all. So you did
That
a
was the
really good
goal.
job.
Yay. Yeah, Frederick was really difficult because, you know, he is a villain. Like, he's a predator. Like, you know, he is definitely a villain for so many of the characters in that story. But I also wanted there to be a hopeful ending. So I really had to like dig with his character and figure out like, okay, like, why is he this way? Like, obviously power is corruptive, but beyond that, like, you know, what is he trying to get? And then not giving too much of that away too soon, because I didn't want my characters to sympathize for him like at the wrong time in the story. So he was a challenge.
I
Think
think you
he
did a really sorry, Alyssa.
no, yeah, go for it.
Okay. I think you did a really good job writing him, especially like you mentioned. I think our personalities and our morals, sometimes they're not all black and white. There's a lot of gray area. And so a villain isn't just a villain. They have a soft spot too. And yeah, so even though I never really empathized with Frederick, I could still see that he wasn't um just 100% I'm out to kill, which that I'm sure that was really hard to do, but you did it very well.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that like the ending, like he did. I mean, I don't know if I would say redemptive quality. That might be too strong, but
Okay.
I do think that he had like there was a glimmer of hope at the end for him.
Hmm.
Which I think like I know a lot of I know a lot of your readers are like write a sequel. No pressure. But I really like how you like ended things with him because I felt like it tied it up nicely. He is, you know, his past is still wicked, but it helps to kind of I don't know, like Jordan said, like every villain has like some of those gray areas where like, you know, they do have a backstory and which does elicit empathy, you know. So I thought you handled that very well.
Well, thanks.
Mhm.
Yeah, I hate him. So, yeah. But I wanted there to be hope for Roxana. I
Yes.
didn't want it to be like, we're leaving. Okay, book over, and she's left in a terrible situation. So
Right.
I'm glad that there was that feeling.
Yeah, for sure. You did a great job. And I don't really like super suspenseful things sometimes. Like I just get like, oh no, but it ended like I love how I'm like, okay, I can rest easy now.
Mm.
So that was comforting. Um, okay, this is slightly off topic, but still within the same vein. But how many books have you written? And what are those about? If you want to just talk about them briefly.
I've written 3 other books. So my first 2 are young adult fantasy, and they're about to get a facelift in the coming year. Because when I wrote these and published them, I was really just like figuring things out. And I was kind of in that stage of like, okay, I wrote this, I want to like take it all the way to completion. And at that time, indie publishing was like not a thing. So I was like, well, I'll just like publish it and like it doesn't matter. And now it's like, oh my gosh, it does matter because Crown of Chains is getting a lot of publicity, and so I kind of want to go back and fix these up a little bit, but they're still great. This one's probably like I just love Bree and Hart, but they're like my favorite. But this one's like a chosen one hero's quest kind of book, and this one is like rivals to friends to more, and is a little bit more of like that political intrigue and combat kind of stuff. But these are both YA fantasy. And then Polarity, this is my trauma in a book, basically. But I wrote this kind of processing a lot of stuff. So this is like a thriller. I mean, I wouldn't put it all the way thriller, but it's definitely suspense thriller. And this is kind of about a girl having to go back and confront her past. And yeah, it's a lot about like PTSD or triggers or emotional or narcissistic abuse. So yes, that one is this one. So if you want to be sad, this is a good one to be sad with. But it is good. Like God taught me a lot through writing it, and so it's cool. It's cool. And then
Well, bravo to you for having a wide range of material and putting your soul on paper. I'm sure that's really hard to do. I'm curious, with the different kinds of books that you're writing, what is your writing process like? Did you approach A Crown of Chains differently than you did Polarity, or yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah. So I would say my first two books were much more of like, I have an idea, I'm gonna make it a book. And like book two was like, I have another idea, I should make another book. And then I took Ted Decker's Creative Way course, and that kind of like revolutionized the way I approach story and think about it as more than just like entertainment or something that's fun. But like that story can really be part of our sanctification, of the way we grow. And then when we share our stories, we're, bringing others along that process with us, that journey with us. So with Polarity and A Crown of Chains, there was a similarity of like, this book has a purpose, like this story has a purpose. And with A Crown of Chains, like it was very like just kind of thinking through like, okay, I want to take all this knowledge I've just absorbed and like use it. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to use something very specific and use my story to kind of work through that and process that. And Polarity is very much about like, Bible says vengeance, it's the Lord's, like, don't take revenge for yourself. And I was like, I don't know if I believe that. I feel like sometimes revenge is good. And so that's kind of where that book came from, is like really wanting to believe in letting things go and giving justice over to God. And so with A Crown of Chains, when I was like, I really want to tell this story, but I need to connect with it, I really went and found that piece again, like just really having, being kind of a people pleaser, fear of man, like those kinds of things, just being really worried sometimes about like, well, if I say this or I say that, like how will people react? And so really wanting to challenge myself to be more confident and courageous with my faith. And so that's kind of a big part of what this story was kind of about. And also like, I just love in this story, it's so inspiring how like God's sovereignty works through even bad things. And so that's a big encouragement that I had from this book, is like just God's faithfulness towards us, no matter what we do or what happens around us, like he's going to win at the end. Nothing can get in his way. So that was a big thing that this also really encouraged me with. Yeah.
Really beautiful. Really, really great. Are you a plotter, plantster, or I think I did that wrong. Plotter, pantster, or plantster? I think I already know the answer.
This is my plotting board.
You're so cute.
So I am a plotter, but I do have like a discovery writing aspect to my process. So like when I sit down, and especially right now, I'm writing retelling. So I have like signposts that I'm trying to hit that are given to me that I don't have to invent. And so a lot of times what I do is I kind of explore my characters and my world a little bit. And then I'll sit down and I'll be like, okay, here are the things that need to happen in this story. Here's what I think they're going to be in my retelling. And then I sit down and I just write the entire story from beginning to end, like as a summary, like, okay, this happens and then this happens. And I just write the whole thing. Normally it's like 10,000 words long the first time. And then I take that and I break it down into like, okay, what do I think works? What doesn't work? And then I go back and I do it again. And then I sticky note it. And each sticky note is a scene. And then I have literally every scene I'm going to write. And then I just go and I put all those scenes into Scrivener, and then I just work my way through them. So like I am a plotter, like I know every single scene I'm going to write in my next book already. But the way that I got there wasn't necessarily by just sitting down and thinking about like, okay, logically what should happen next. So yeah.
That's fascinating.
I'm at a loss for words.
So I am a plotter. I don't just start my first draft with nothing, but I start with a lot, but yeah.
I'm inspired.
I really love sticky notes. So
I feel like you're echoing everything going on in my head. I'm like, I'm inspired. I'm fascinated. I am like, I really am like that. I wish I could do that, but my mind doesn't work as organized. Like it's wow.
I think it's also like secretly to feed my like love for buying office supplies, because the more Sharpies I use, the more Sharpies I can buy. So
That's fair. Well, Erin, we're so curious. What writers have inspired your writing?
I'm prepared. I was like, I'm gonna have props. So I kind of thought about this question in two sections, as like section one being like, what did I grow up reading that really influenced me to be a storyteller? And then what I'm reading now that's like really influencing me as an author or with my storytelling. So when I was a kid, I read a lot of like Gail Carson Levine, and like her book Writing Magic was especially like inspiring for me. It's like super old, but just kind of got me started on this journey of like, oh, like anyone can be a writer, anyone can write books. Like she really inspired me with that. And so I really love her stuff.
I'm
But what I read a lot of, yeah, we love Gail.
I'm reading her From Think to Ink book right now. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
really
so
good.
great. It's like this, but longer.
Yeah,
So
it's
good.
great.
I have that one, Erin. The one that I read that one too.
Yeah, it's
But
so
I
good.
want to read Think to Ink.
Sometimes I get it out and I'll be like, you know what? I need to write. Let me come and get like one of her little prompts and like
Mhm.
do a little something. So she was huge. And then I read a lot of Star Wars, especially like Kevin J. Anderson. And I still read his work. He wrote the Dune prequel series. And so he is just a phenomenal storyteller. And so I love that like I read his kids stuff growing up and now I read his adult stuff and like it's still just as great. But I read like so much Star Wars. That was like one of my primary source materials, I would say, growing up was Star Wars. And then when I became a teenager, I started reading Ted Dekker. Like, I don't know, when did this book come out? 2016. So I was probably like 13, 14, because I remember this series coming out. And this author, Ted Dekker, just like really, I don't know. I don't think I read anything else but Ted Dekker for like a long time. Just so inspiring how like, he's a Christian author, but I just loved how like he wrote thrillers and they're like suspenseful, but there's also like it's about Jesus somehow and like there's Bible in there, but like, in a very discreet way. And I just really learned from him that story has power, I think, for the first time. Like I'd read a lot of stories that were entertaining and I enjoyed, but when I started reading Ted Dekker, I was like, wow, stories have power. So yeah, so those are kind of like the books I read growing up a lot that I think really got my start in like, I love story. Story is so great. But now the whole stack. So Sarah Ella Nadine Brandes. I really love them. I do their webinars. Sarah Ella's been really encouraging for me this year, especially she read A Crown of Chains and wrote me an endorsement. Just really, really kind. And I really, she is like a phenomenal writer and Nadine is as well, but just really inspired by how they approach storytelling as Christians and like being a Christian woman and an author. And so just as people like they've been huge in just inspiring me in my walk as an author and as a woman of God. So super love them, highly recommend them. And then Heather Gutenkop. I freaking love Heather Gutenkop. She's so good. So she writes domestic thrillers, which is like so different from everything else I read. But so they're very suspenseful, very fast-paced. But what I love about her work is like she is so compassionate. Like her stories often are like a 40-year-old woman and a 12-year-old girl a lot of times. And I just love how, she has these tense situations, like sometimes really terrible situations, but she builds up so much compassion for people. And I just like love how she's able to do that, how she's able to like just really take a situation where like bad things have happened and it makes you like love people more who have been in those situations and like really understand like what got them there or just having more understanding for what it's like to go through something terrible. So like she like changed my world when I found her books. I was like, wow, this is like amazing. So Heather Gutenkop, like just the power of story again, like I just love that. I love how a story can like change your perspective on people and the world. And she does that so well. If you like very suspenseful mystery thrillers, which Alyssa, you should not read her. She'd be too
That's awesome.
Yes, and then but my YA big favorite right now is Erin Craig. She writes like YA fantasy horror, and I love scary things. So she's kind of a big one I'm reading right now that I just really love the way she approaches story and retellings and writing and plot and character. And so she's one that I've read that I really aspire to kind of that standard of like storytelling and plot development and twists and stuff like that. So those are my books.
So cool. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. We only have a few minutes left, so we only have time for one more question. No, it's okay. We have time for one more question.
I talked too much about books.
No, never stop. Never, ever stop. Keep going forever.
We'll have to have you on again.
I know. We'll end with one more question though, because we have about a few minutes. If you want to, in 2 short minutes, how can you maybe tell us if there's anything else you would like readers to know about A Crown of Chains or any of your other books, but more specifically A Crown of Chains?
It comes out October 25th, and if you pre-order now, you get swag. Yeah, I would just say if you pick up A Crown of Chains, expect characters to be different than maybe VeggieTales. A big part of A Crown of Chains is Mordecai's character he's not very pious. So don't go in expecting Mordecai to be this doting uncle. And then the other thing is like Frederick is a predator, like, you know, Esther is a concubine. It's not like a beauty pageant, which is how a lot of iterations are like, it's a beauty pageant. He falls in love because she's so beautiful. And like that wasn't the case. And so there is kind of sexual assault in this book that's addressed, you know, not graphically, but it's also not avoided. So if that's triggering or things like that, I have had readers who read it and had a past where they weren't triggered, and readers who felt like it was too much. So just kind of know like where you're at in your journey, or what you're sensitive to. Because I really did try to write it so it'd be appropriate as much as possible, but I didn't want to shy away from it or pretend like it didn't happen. So yeah, but it's great. I'm sorry if it makes you sad.
You said that to me when I first started reading it. Oh, I hope you're not too sad. And sad is not the right word. It's more moved to compassion for Roxana and for her people. And especially the way you wrap everything up at the end, it does end on a very hopeful note. So I think you did a very good job.
Thanks. I'm excited.
We're excited for you. It's so close. Just I think a few more weeks if my calendar's correct. And then it's going to be out in the world and in people's hands and in their hearts forever. And it'll be glorious and great. So yeah, Erin, it was so sweet having you here. We really enjoyed asking you questions, hearing more about your book and the writing process and your heart. We definitely have to have you on here again for a part 2 to talk about Parker and Fable.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. They were kind of here. Yes, this hour flew by way too fast.
I know. I'm crying.
This was so fun. Thank you, Erin.
Thanks for having me. It was super fun just to chat, and I feel like, I don't know, you guys are so fun to talk with, and I just love what you guys do with the books and bindings, so it's fun to be a part of it.
Aww. Well, we're all so thankful. Great. I'm going to log us off now, but we'll have to have you back again.
Woo. Bye.
Bye.